My stepdad turned my family against me. Original post. So let me start this off by saying I apologize for how long this may be. My dad passed when I was 14. Him and my mom weren't all that close by that time. So while it hit me hard, she wasn't as fazed as you'd expect. I joined the military when I was 18. It sounds like my first year away from home was when my mom remarried. Unfortunately, I didn't really connect with her new husband. Our personalities clashed, and he often made snarky comments, telling me to toughen up in situations that bothered me. These exchanges often led to arguments, and I must admit I was sometimes just as responsible for these disagreements as he was, though it never got too serious. I got medically discharged after a little under 5 years, and my mom and him said they'd be happy to have me back in the house. I told him it would be brief, just until I got on my feet and got a job. I'd even offered to pay rent, to which they declined. About 3 days into being back home, my stepdad got alone with me, asked what he thought a fair rent would be. I was confused, but it was his house, so we came to an agreement, and I kept it from my mom, assuming he did not want her to know, as he never mentioned it around her. I never asked for anything from them, not out of spite. I just wanted to do things myself. From a previous marriage, my stepdad has a son who's older than me. He and I didn't have many shared interests, or much in common, but we generally got along fine. The only thing that stood out was that he received a lot of financial support from our parents. They covered his education expenses, his car, and even his living costs during college, despite me being just a bit younger than him. So he started college right after they married. But like I said, he didn't want or need help, but it felt lame that he'd get all that assistance, and I was immediately asked for rent. But I digress. I moved out after 3 months, and not long after I met a girl who I was crazy about, and we started dating. It was my first relationship, and I was over the moon the entire time, like in that early relationship haze, but it was just constant. I was very nervous to bring her home. My mom and I were very close, and I always worried she'd be very judgmental if a girl I'd bring home. My worries ended up being unwarranted though. It was amazing how well my girlfriend and my parents bonded. Unfortunately, my girlfriend doesn't have a family due to a complex situation. So my mom and stepdad became like family for her. They hit it off so well that my girlfriend and my mom would spend time together, just the two of them. Sometimes this brought me immense joy. Even my stepdad really took a liking to her, and I felt it brought all of us closer together. Something I didn't realize I wanted until it happened. His dad abandoned his family growing up, and he put himself through school and got a nice, high-paying job all by himself, which I had immense respect in him. For about a year, when I knew this was the girl I was going to marry, I told my mom and stepdad, and they both seemed extremely happy. She was practically part of the family already. My mom then gave me her engagement ring my dad gave her, which kept the job I had. Didn't pay great, so I figured even if it wasn't a ring she'd always have, it would be a great placeholder. But when I proposed, my girlfriend told me it wasn't a placeholder, and she absolutely loved it. I was legitimately never happier in my life. Wedding planning was underway, and my mom and stepdad generously offered to assist with the finances. It was a touching gesture, especially since it was the first time they had offered financial help. However, about 3 months later, my stepdad called me and asked me to come over. I couldn't shake off a sense of foreboding, but I headed over there after finishing work. When I got there, my mom, stepdad, stepbrother, and fiancé, I saw her on a couch and could tell she had been crying. I immediately thought someone had died and went to go sit next to her. When my stepdad stopped me, he started hitting me with accusations of me cheating on her for our entire relationship. I was puzzled and told everyone there, I don't even text any women I'm not related to besides her. Apparently some girl had gotten my fiancé's number and told her that we were sleeping together for over a year now, but she didn't know I was in a committed relationship. She sent her screenshots of alleged conversations and knew stuff about me that a random person wouldn't know. I, like a fool, couldn't see what was happening in front of me. I felt shocked, really sad, and super angry. I stood there pleading with her from far away to just check my phone, but she refused. Both my mom and I were in tears, and I couldn't help but cry too. My stepdad started saying terrible things to me, using every bad word he could think of, and he made me leave the house. He even threatened to call the police if he ever saw me there again. It was all really overwhelming and scary. I spent the next several weeks trying to contact them, to no avail. Calls, texts, voicemails, every messaging app out there. Nothing. After those weeks, I got a call from my stepdad who told me to stop trying to contact her, and that I was never welcome in his house or around his family again. I tried to call my mother over this time, to no avail as well. After about a month, all I got from anyone was a text from my mother saying how sad and disappointed she was. My mom didn't really have much family, so they always spent holidays with my stepdad's side. They all shunned me as well as all other Christmas pictures and Facebook with my ex-fiancé present and seemingly in good spirits, which crushed me. I felt like the only family willing to talk to me was my dad's brother and his family, but even they seemed a bit cautious around me. The only person who I think genuinely trusted and believed me was my uncle. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done without him. He filled a huge gap in my life by showing me the kind of caring and fatherly love I had been missing. He was a real lifeline for me during that tough time, and I've never been so grateful for anyone. About 6 months after it all, I moved away from the East Coast and settled out in California, needing to get away from it all. A little less than a year after I moved, I got a call from an area code from back home, which I rarely got anymore. I picked up and it was my brother, whom I promptly hung up on. He called me back and I ignored it, but it stuck with me all day. I decided that if he called back again, I'd pick up, which he did later that night. It was awkward at best. It's old B, my fiancée, was really torn up for a long time. It took her nearly a year to even start looking again for a significant other. I hadn't been involved with that person since it ended. A few months later, my stepdad actually pushed him to ask her out on a date, and he did. The initial outing seemed alright, but it never really felt right, I guess. He talked to my stepdad about it, and shockingly, my stepdad told him that I didn't let go of that past relationship for no reason. He mentioned that she's a wonderful girl. You need to figure it out with her. I almost collapsed, and it was quickly replaced with anger. Apparently he had gotten a girl who I didn't know to pose as someone I had an affair with and forged some message screenshots to have her sent to my fiancé. Stop, brother told me, had said it to him about a month ago and he didn't know what to do. Apparently it bothered him enough that he couldn't just sit on the info anymore. So he told me and said he was going to tell my mom and fiancé the next day. He called me first as a courtesy, so he knew what to say to them regarding me. I told him where I was and that I'd appreciate it if they didn't immediately contact me, so I had some time to digest it all. That happened last Tuesday. I sent a text to let them know I'm open to talking if they want, and they could call me the next day. I'm not sure what I'll say or what they might say either. I anticipate tears, lots of apologies, and probably a mix of other emotions. It's going to take a lot for me to consider forgiveness or anything like that. The only person I've told so far is my uncle, who I've asked to keep it himself. Sorry again. For how long? This was my therapist just had picked a wrong week to go on vacation, and I needed to vent now. For the top advice before reading the updates here is that father is a truly awful, insecure, small-minded man. Just my 2 cents, but you should always stay. No contact with him. He will never be on your side. You might be able to understand why ex-fiancé believed what she did and even forgive her, but that does not mean you should re-establish any type of relationship. That boat sailed when she didn't believe you or give you a chance to prove your innocence. It sounds like there are many other women out there waiting to meet someone like you, someone who isn't easily influenced by past hurt and betrayal. I'm really sorry for all the pain this situation has brought you. It seems like having her stepfather in the picture would make your home life a lot happier without any of them involved. It must be overwhelming to process all of this. I'm glad everyone found out the truth. Now that you have every right to take your time to rebuild the relationships that were destroyed. If that's what you want to do, I always suggest you start therapy too, and we would love to hear from you again. Started therapy after moving last year and most definitely have benefited from it. Now for the first update. Sorry for the delay. Busy day at work and obviously a lot of other stuff on my mind. My stepbrother called me this morning and told me exactly what had happened this past week. So apparently what my stepfather said wasn't exactly what he told me. He elaborated more and said he was very careful with his words so as to not incriminate himself. He gave strong hints about something important without exactly saying it aloud. You know, my stepbrother is really clever, even smarter than me. Instead of rushing to tell my mom and fiancé about it, which might lead to a big argument with his dad, he chose a different way that surprised me. He managed to get my ex's phone and discovered something about a girl. Said it took him forever to backtrack it. He gave her a call and got her to meet him out in public. And that's where it all came to a head. She was a tender match with my stepfather, which I think pretty clearly indicates that he had been sleeping around on my mom. That irritated me even more for obvious reasons. This girl alleges they did not sleep together. However, whether that is the truth did not matter to me. What does is my stepbrother talked to her and pulled on her heartstrings with his story and all that had happened. For the record, she clearly knew what she was doing. Maybe the time of hearing what had happened to me really shook her up. It seems that it doesn't affect me much. She shared what occurred. There was an agreement for $8,000 just for making a phone call. That was the arrangement. He guided her on what to say and provided evidence in the form of pictures. She made the call as discussed. Later, my stepbrother asked if she could inform my mother and ex about it, and he even offered to pay her again, just to clarify the details. She agreed to do it for free, and that happened on yesterday. My stepfather is on a business trip until Wednesday, so it was the four of them there. She came in and spilled it all to my mom and ex. Sam brothers said a tear started almost immediately from all three of them. After everything he told them, I was in California and that he'd tell them when I wanted to be contacted. This was before I texted him a little backstory for you guys to try to understand some stuff about my mother and ex-fiancé. And this is in no way defending their actions, just to help some folks understand. My mother and I were inseparable after my dad passed. We were each other's rock. When I turned 16, I began to drink to cut a solid all a bit. It was supposed to be New Year's Eve spent together with my mom when I was 16. But I ended up out with my friends and got really drunk. My mom spent the night alone at home and it changed things between us. I received a text from her expressing how sad she felt being alone, and that really made me feel terrible about the situation. I stopped drinking that day until after everything went to hell. She's the type of person to always need someone. She can't handle being alone. I think when her and my dad's love began to fade, I feel that void. And when I was growing and ended up leaving home, my stepfather filled that void, then my ex. As I said earlier, she doesn't have a family. Really, she had some real trust issues due to this, along with some really nasty past relationships. Despite this, she never would talk badly about past boyfriends, which I really admired. One was physically abusive, and I consider that an obvious exception. I, despite being debilitating like shy, have been often told that I'm cute. Especially by younger girls, meaning younger than me, not children. I never liked that title as it's not very masculine, but got over it and learned to appreciate my boyish face and how often I would blush. My fiancé is just shy of 3 years older than me. I've always preferred older girls and never given much time or thought. The two girls who seemingly liked me because they were 18 to 20. Despite my efforts, the attention from other girls continued, which made my fiancé upset. She would often question why I wasn't interested in these other girls, why I didn't leave her for someone younger or more attractive, and so on. I always found her extremely attractive, much more than I saw myself, and I constantly reassured her about it. I made sure she knew I only cared about her, but I digress. Sorry about the diversion. That again, I hope, brings a little insight. Why I think they did what they did and believed what they believed. Again, this is not an excuse for them, nor am I really all that understanding personally. Eddie, end of the call with my brother. He said they both wanted to call today and I told him that would be fine. So I sat and waited. By about 3 p.m. I was a little confused. I started to wonder if he'd made it all up to mess with me. It really worried me, honestly. Then I got a text from him asking if I was all good. And I said yeah, and asked if they were actually planning and calling today. He said they'd been trying for the last few hours. When I moved out west, I thought about shutting them both out and blocking them. I almost did it, but luckily I changed my mind. Instead, I ended up blocking both of them. About 10 minutes later, my mom called me. The first thing she mentioned was that I sounded different. It took a lot for me not to hang up right away, and I struggled just to say a quiet yeah. She broke down immediately after that. I really thought I'd feel more. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing, but the pain of it all just took hold of me more than her words. She asked if I'd gotten her text. I said no. I guess she'd been trying to text over the last year, but I had her number blocked. If she really wanted to reach me, she could have. Maybe that's a little crappy, but I know it's true. I pretty much told her that I'd be willing to build some semblance of a relationship back with time, and she was happy with that. She also told me she was getting all her necessities out of the house before my stepfather got home and she'd be filing for divorce immediately. I trust her. I really do. Even though I don't see her as a good mom, she's not someone who does things halfway. I wish I could be there to see the shock on her face when she returns to an empty home. Then, my ex got the phone and did something similar. My mom apologized tearfully. It made me feel a bit closer to her. I actually tried to get her to thank and remember how many times I told her I would never do that to her and how much I loved her and she was beside herself. And to be honest, I'm glad we talked for about half an hour and I really thought it was pleasant. Even though I told myself for over a year now that it would never happen again, I thought there could still be something to us. She told me she still had a ring and it's made me upset and just told her to give it to my mom because it didn't belong to either of us anymore. I could tell that really crushed her and selfishly I wanted it to. She asked if she could call/text me. I told her I was fine but to not expect a prompt response either way, which she understood. Pretty much gave her the same ultimatum as my mom. Even though I mentioned that the possibility of us having a future relationship is very unlikely, which is quite sad. She understood my perspective too. My last conversation was with my brother and I expressed gratitude for everything he had done. He was assisting my mom in getting his belongings from his father's house, apologized for all that had happened, and mentioned that he was planning to inform the rest of the family about everything too. Them, I have no connection to and won't say a word to. I don't imagine, except my stepdad's mother, oldest person in either of two families. And she wished me a happy birthday and Merry Christmas over the last year. Maybe she was old enough that she doesn't care. Maybe she felt bad, but I'll talk to her. Odd as it is, sorry for all the rambling. I'll fly home for my uncle's 60th birthday the first week of March. It'll be my first time home since I moved out here now. Definitely plan on seeing my brother as well. I'm not adverse to seeing my mom and ex, but I've made it clear to them that I've got a lot of healing to do, and so do they. If anything further happens, I'll update again, maybe after the trip home. But that looks like it for the time being. Also, this is kind of the last social media I have. I haven't been on here super often in the last year, for the reasons I'm sure you could guess. I truly haven't seen any similar stories to mine that have been referenced in the comments. I really wish you could help me find them. Thanks everyone. Here's my second update. Recently, I received a call from a number in my hometown. I had removed most numbers from my contacts that I hadn't been in touch with lately. I answered the call, and it turned out to be my stepfather. He said hello, but I quickly ended the call and blocked his number. Straight away, I phoned my mom, fiance, and brother to inform them about it. They're all safe and not around him. Mom is in a hotel that he doesn't know about. Fiance and brother are at their own residences and both say they feel adequately protected. He is not by any indication a violent man, but better safe than sorry. My brother said he got a call from him this morning when he got home after my mom was there and wouldn't answer. My brother explained everything to him and asked him not to reach out to anyone. I don't know how long he's staying in the area, but he called me around 3 p.m. Pacific time and then another time about an hour ago. I received a message from a different number saying we need to talk. I think it's him, but I haven't replied yet. That's the latest update. Also, my stepdad's mother called me. I had her number saved because of my earlier concerns and it caught me a bit off guard. It may have been him trying to gather some info as something it wasn't. She's a very sweet lady who did not have to be nice to me in any way, but has shown me compassion. She was very nice and wished me well, while also apologizing on behalf of the family. I thanked her and wished her the best too. Shocking it came from that woman.